Glory to God. Last week we was going over a series which is called "What Does It Mean to Fear God?" And God had delivered them with a mighty hand from Pharaoh, from Egypt, which is the house of bondage. God have done many plagues and done miracles and signs and wonders, letting the Pharaoh know that he is serious about delivering his people. You will let my people go. And God delivered them from Egypt, bringing them to a mountain, a holy mountain, Mount Sinai, where he wanted to meet with his people face to face. And he wanted them to hear his voice. And so he had the people gather and prepare themselves, washing their linen, washing their clothes, sanctifying themselves for this event that's going to take place. It was almost like a wedding, if you would, where the bride is preparing herself, adorning herself with beauty and glory to meet her husband. And the children waited in great expectation as Moses received instruction from God on how this wedding was going to take place. And so God come down on a mountain with smoke, and there was lightning and thunder, and it was a glorious sight to see, but also a sobering, terrifying thing to see. And the people were afraid, just point blank. The people were afraid. They didn't sign up for this. They were not expecting this. They hearing horns in the background, blaring loud, and it was a scary sight to see. And so they told Moses, "Hey, Moses, won't you go talk to God? We thought we was ready for this, but we're not ready for this. Won't you go talk to God for us, and whatever he says, we will do." And so Moses told them, "Don't be afraid. God just came to test you, to prove you, that you may know not to sin against him." And so the fear of God was over the children of Israel. They knew that God was mighty and powerful, and that he was no one to be played with. He was God alone. There was no other God beside him.
Come on.
And so the people surrendered their response to God. God, we're going to obey you. You will be our God, right? Just like a wedding vow, right? I will be your husband. You will be my wife. I vow myself to you for better or worse, right? For death do us part. I'm going to ride or die with you. We're in covenant relationship.
Come on.
And so the people say yes. The people of God said yes. We will obey in the laws that you have given us. You will be our God. And God had in mind when he chosen Israel to be a special, peculiar people upon the face of the earth. Israel was not supposed to be like the surrounding nations. They were not supposed to do the things that the surrounding nations done. The surrounding nations worship many gods, lowercase g, right? They built shrines and temples and set up high places, elevated on mountains to their gods, whether it was the sun god or fire god or god of fertility and all these different gods that they'd imagine in their own minds. They set it up in worship. But God wanted this nation to be different, and he wanted to reveal himself as the true and living God, and there is no other God beside him. Amen. So God gave them his commandments, his statutes, his prescriptions, if you will, to teach the people how they should live and how to be holy and how they should worship the one true living God. He hadn't done that with any other nation. It was the chosen nation of Israel. And so God said, if you obey these commands, that there were certain things that will follow you, such as blessings. My hand will be upon you. My protection will be upon you. My favor will surround you like a shield. It will go well with you in the land that I'm taking you. The land will produce its crops for you. I will rain down the latter rain for your crops, and you will harvest. You won't lack anything. I will be your God, and you will be my people.
Come on.
And the surrounding nations, when they see your righteous ways and the laws that I've given you that you're executing and that you're walking out, they will say to themselves, what a mighty wise nation. The way they handle their business, their livelihood, their lifestyle is peculiar, it's strange, it is right. So Israel was supposed to influence the surrounding nations.
Come on.
They were never supposed to be under the influence.
Exactly.
They were supposed to teach other nations and bring them into the knowledge of the one true living God.
Come on.
Yahweh, as we know him, the Lord. He said, I am that I am.
Come on.
And so God told them and prophesied to them and told them, there's going to come a time where you want to replace me. Mm-hmm. And you're going to want to be like the surrounding nations. You're going to want kings for yourselves.
Like right now.
While all along I was your king. The God Almighty was their king. God Almighty was leading them victorious in battle. Israel defeated many opposing nations that tried to stand in their way. Because God was on their side. God was their king. God was their president. And so as history goes on, King Saul is anointed king, and he grew up in the stature of God, and he had the Spirit of God upon him until one day he decided to be disobedient to the prophet Samuel, and he thought he was a priest instead of just standing in his place as king, and he offered sacrifices and didn't obey the instructions of the Lord, and he rebelled against God, and therefore God rejected him. And his kingdom did not stand. He anointed another man. You know the man as David. King David. He anointed David, raised up David, gave David many promises for his household. But it did come a time where David fell short. And he committed adultery with another man's wife and had him killed. And it caused a lot of judgment to be brought upon his own household.
In that order. And
so Israel ended up having many kings, 19 to be exact. Israel did, because their kingdom was divided. The northern kingdom was Israel, and the southern kingdom is what we call and know as Judah, the house of praise, right? And so we're going to focus on the kingdom, the northern kingdom of Israel. God had commanded his people in Deuteronomy 10, verse 12 to 13, and he said, oh, now Israel, he's talking to the house of Israel, what do the Lord thy God require of you? What does he require of you but to fear the Lord thy God? God said, I want you to take me serious. I want you to take me serious. I don't want you to play with me. You know that I am holy. I am righteous. My ways are not like your ways. My thoughts are not like your thoughts. Don't play with me. Take me serious. Reverence me. And so God said, I require this of you. To fear me and to walk in all my ways. To let my ways be your lifestyle. And to love me. We have a God that wants love. He wants us to love him as he loves us. And his love language is called obedience. You can't say that you love God and you're disobedient. You walk in the ways of the world.
Come on.
So God said, I want you to walk in my ways, and this will show me that you love me, that you fear me, you respect me, you take me serious. And then also he said, I want you to minister unto me. I want you to serve me, God said. And the way I want you to serve it, I require this of you. Because if you're not doing it from your heart and from your soul, you're not worshiping me. New Testament said, if you're not doing it in spirit and in truth, you're not worshiping me. True worshipers will worship God with all that they have. Not just on Sunday morning. True worshipers will worship them with their whole heart, which means your whole mind, your soul, your being, your strength, your substance. You will worship God. You will lay it at his feet. You will live a life of obedience and submission.
Come on.
God said, I want you to keep my commandments. I am charging you. God said, I put a charge on you to keep my commandments and follow my statutes, my prescriptions. You know how when you go to the doctor and he do a evaluation of you and he diagnose you, he see the symptoms that you may be having, and he say, you know what, I'm going to fill out a prescription to diagnose and help with your problems. God said, well, I have a prescription for life, and it's called my statutes, and it's going to help you to live. It's going to help you to prosper. It's going to help you and cause you to live an abundant life.
That's good. Come on.
And God said, which I command you this day. Watch this. He said, I'm commanding you this. Why, God? Why, God, are you commanding us? He said, for your good.
Love it. Come on.
So the fear of God is not for God, but the fear of God is for you. It's for your own good. My God, it's for your own good. God said, I want you to walk in my ways and fear me. It's for your own benefit. Deuteronomy 9:11 says it like this, that thou might fear the Lord thy God and keep all his statutes and commandments, which I command thee. Watch this. You and your son and your son's sons all the days of your life, and that thy days may be prolonged. Fearing God, Brian Jr., will prolong your life.
Glory to God.
It will sustain your life. You want to live a long life, a healthy life? Then fear God. Take him serious now while you have the chance.
Amen.
To all my young men and women out there, if you want to live a long and prosperous life, it begins with the fear of God. You have to now begin to take God serious while you're in your youth.
That's it. Come
Take
on.
him serious. Learn of him. Study his word. Study the ways of God.
That's
and
it.
how he wants you to live this life. He will keep you from a lot of trouble, a lot of bondage and the snares and the traps that the enemy has set for your life. I myself have fell in those traps because I wasn't following the ways of God.
Glory
But
to
you
God.
don't have to go the way that I and so many others have went. You can live a victorious life. You can live a long and healthy and prosperous life if you do it God's way. So God is warning and telling the children that it will go well with you. And not only you, but it will go well with your children. And not only your children and you, but it will go well with your children's children.
Come on.
I will bless and preserve your generation. So I'm here to say that a generation or a nation that doesn't fear God, you will not last long.
Come on.
God said, I want to preserve you.
Come on.
I want you to sustain in this life.
That's it.
But the children of Israel still wanted their king for themselves.
Come on. Yes, they did.
And after the sins of David, God said the kingdom will split. And it's going to split into two parts. This will be a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. Today, like I said, we're going to focus on the northern kingdom, which is Israel. Israel had 19 kings. I'm going to give you a little summary of them. It starts with Solomon. Jeroboam came into the picture.
Come on.
My God, Jeroboam led the people away from God.
Come on.
He was an evil king. He caused the people to commit adultery. They was worshiping idols, building up shrines and burning sage and incense, all the things that God said, I do not want you to do.
Something we're doing now. Come on.
That's what the other nations are doing. I didn't tell you to worship me in that manner. And so now they worshiping other gods,
Uh-oh.
burning incense and doing different things like that. God said, I didn't command that. Divination and enchantments is worthless. Don't worship me in that manner. But Jeroboam, the king, led Israel, the whole nation, in that way.
Come on.
And after him, the son of Jeroboam did the same thing. He continued in his father's footsteps until he was assassinated during wartime. And then another king, Baasha, he came on, who was the one that killed Nadab and destroyed the whole family of Jeroboam. I told Jeroboam that was going to happen. Because you walked evil, your whole house will be destroyed. And King Baasha was the fulfillment of that by killing Jeroboam's whole family. However, Baasha continued to lead the people into idol worship as well. And the Lord sent word through a prophet, Jehu, that his whole house would be destroyed as well.
Come on. Come on.
So another king, Eli, came up on the scene, and he didn't even stand a chance because the will of God was already revealed that whole house was going to fall. So he didn't even stand a chance. If I was him, I wouldn't even took the crown. Anybody put me in that position, but he took it anyway.
Come on.
And he followed in his father's footsteps, leading the children of Israel into idol worship. And one of his military officers, Zimri, assassinated him while he was trying to get drunk. This is like a scene of Young and the Restless, a movie or something. There's a lot going on in Israel. Then King Omri, the one that cracked his head, came up on the scene and continued on in idolatry as well. But it took 4 years before he can able really to take the throne because the people was already divided at this point. They didn't really know if they wanted him to be king, but he wound up winning the little war between him and another guy, and so he wound up taking the throne. And Omri is the one that purchased Samaria. Okay? This is important because this set up the backdrop for what we about to get into. Y'all know King Ahab and his famous wife Jezebel. They came after Omri, right? And Ahab, he was a wicked king. He was controlled and manipulated by his wife Jezebel, and they worshiped the lowercase g god Baal. And they had a lot of false prophets and Baal worship prophets, and they continued to lead the children of Israel from God to worship idols. Are you getting my point here? Leaders, when you choose to have the spotlight on yourself, and you make yourself as God.
Come on.
And you don't lead the people to God, and you build up your own followers for yourselves. Woe unto you, because every leader that tried to do that failed and was destroyed. Oof. Leaders, if you're going to lead your people. Lead your people to God. Don't lead them away from God. You worship the one and true living God. You don't allow people to worship you. You point them to Jesus Christ.
Come on.
When they want to follow you and make you their God, you correct them and point them back to God. Do not allow them to make you an idol. This is not American Idol. You don't allow them to do that. You point them and correct them in love and point them to God and God alone.
Come on,
you teach them, leaders. You teach them the ways of God. You teach them to take God serious and to fear them. You teach them daily living according to his word. You do not take his glory. You do not build up followers for yourselves. Do not lead the children of God to hell because of your own pride and emptiness, your insecurities.
That's good. Come on.
Every leader that tried to do that, they failed. God destroyed them. Judgment came upon them. And so King Ahab, he fell. Ahaziah fell. Jehoram fell. Jehu fell. All these kings fell. Jehoash, Jeroboam, Zechariah, Jalom. All of these kept following and leading the children of Israel to worship idols. And they all fell. Some of them started off good, like many of you. Many of you started off good, had a heart for God. You burned with passion for God. You were zealous for God. And you preached the gospel uncompromisingly. You gave to the poor. You visited the sick and the prisoners. You was on fire for God. But somewhere along the way, when you begin to be elevated, you lost your passion and zeal for God. And you fell into idol worship and vanity. Come back home. Repent. Repent. Turn back to God.
Come on.
Let's acknowledge our ways. It's so easy and subtle to do. It's so easy and subtle to do. Any man can fall into this trap. Even myself have to be on guard not to allow people to praise me and worship me and to give me pats on the back and elevate my head and allow me to get all swole up thinking I'm all that when I know that I'm nothing without them.
Come on.
And so many of the kings started off good, but then their hearts was turned away from God. And because their hearts were turned away from God, they turned the children of Israel hearts away from God as well and led them into idol worship.
Come on.
And so we see here the king Pekah, he was a chief officer. He was the one that actually assassinated the previous king Pekahiah, and he took over the throne. Pekah entered into an alliance with the king of Syria. Follow me, follow me, follow me. We need to know history. And attacked Judah, the southern kingdom.
Come on.
And in response, King Hazan, which was the king of Judah, sought out help from the Assyrians. And Assyria invaded and took many cities.
Come on.
And so we see that Hoshea at this time, assassinated Peacock. Oh, it was doing a lot of what the young people call backdooring. Yeah, that's when your own friends snake you out and kill you. And they were doing a lot of that because they wanted the throne as well. Young people, listen to me. Young men, you out there in the streets, listen to me. They're not your friends. They will backdoor you too because they want the glory. They want to sit on the throne. They want to shine the way they think you're shining. And so you thinking that they're your friends because they support you and they ride or die, they amp you up, but they will backdoor you too. This is nothing new. This has been going on in the Word of God as well.
Wow.
Young men, you getting cut and killed by your own friend. The person that you trust in your life with, that's riding with you everywhere that you go, will backdoor you in a minute to take what you have. Don't even know that they're jealous of you. This is nothing new. What's going on in the Word of God as well.